This is insane. An NHL Insider reveals that Trevor Zegras may be on the move, as well as we have an injury update on Leafs goaltender Joesph Woll. We'll break all this down for you coming up on this episode of Hattrick HQ. But before we get into it, just want to say we're on the road for 3,000 subscribers. We're almost at 2,500. So if you're not subscribed to the channel and you love the NHL, make sure to go down below and hit that subscribe button. But with that said, let's get right to the first topic of the video today, which is Trevor Zegras on the trade block. And as we take a look here from Trevor Zegras, he said on his podcast that he's been told by several teams that Trevor Zegras may be available via trade, which is very interesting. As we take a look at Trevor Zegras at 22 years of age, former 9th overall pick back in 2019, his point production has been a little under what everybody expected from him, but he still is only 22 years old and has lots of time to improve here in the NHL. This season with 7 points through 19 games, and last year he had 65 points through 81 games. And we also take a look here. He did sign a new deal this offseason, which was a $17.25 million contract over 3 years, which would put his AAV at 5.75. And Mark, this is really interesting to me that Pat Verbeek and the Ducks may potentially move on from Trevor Zegras, a guy who was supposed to be their franchise guy. I really do think that this could be an interesting trade. They could get some great value back for a guy like this, and it'll be really interesting to see if they could move this guy. But what teams stand out to you that could be potential landing spots for Trevor Zegras?
The first thing I will touch on with Zegras is on the podcast, they were kind of saying how there's speculation going around. A lot of teams and people have just been kind of talking, and, just there's rumors floating around that he might not be the ideal player for the Ducks. You do look at this Ducks team, they did just make a trade with Philly to get Cutter. They have a guy like McTavish, Leo Carlson. They have so much forward depth and not so much on defense. They do have defensive depth still, but they did just trade up Jamie Drysdale. So maybe they're going to look at trading Zegras for another defenseman. This could be the situation of maybe, hey, he doesn't look like our future anymore. We have so much more talent coming up at forward that we need to kind of add on defense. So maybe a team like the Detroit Red Wings or another team that's just kind of the middling teams that are making that big playoff push, that are coming out of this retool to kind of get back into it. I'm not sure exactly what the value would be right now, but honestly, a lot of teams are going to be calling on Zegras. I can't see in a lot of contending teams, as they probably don't have the picks or prospects to really make this impact. But whatever team does land him, you get a really skilled forward that is, he's a show himself. You see him doing the Michigan, throwing the puck over from a pass from behind the net. This guy is exciting and just exhilarating on offense, but does need to improve his defensive game. Maybe a new system or just getting a taste of the playoffs might do this, but teams need to be wary of the defensive liability he might be at times.
Yeah, he's definitely the most exciting, or one of the most exciting players in the NHL. You mean when you're pulling off of Michigan, like you said, it's hard not to sell tickets that way when you have that guy on your team. But like you said here with the Drysdale trade, that kind of came out of left field. Everything was kind of kept hush hush, and nobody really expected that to happen yesterday. So maybe this is something we may see with Zegras. Maybe they keep it under wraps, and maybe just one day we check our phones and Zegras is gone out of Anaheim. But a team I really want him to see him go to is, you can call me biased, but I want to see him go to the Montreal Canadiens. I think they have the value there that they can give back to get a guy like Trevor Zegras. You bring this guy in, one of Cole Caulfield's closest buddies, could be really fun. They could be really fun line together in the NHL, and could really help Montreal come out of the end of the rebuild with a guy like this at 22 years old. Maybe we see this happen not at the deadline, but in the upcoming offseason. I really do think Kent Hughes will look at this for what it is, and it would be really nice to see him in a Montreal Canadiens uniform.
Yeah, a lot of teams are going to be on him. I know a lot of Leafs fans are going to talk about this guy and say, hey, can we fit him? In my opinion, it's hard to pay this guy the 5.5 or 5.7, whatever his contract might be, going into next season, especially with them having to still pick up a left winger too, maybe another right-handed defenseman. I think they need to kind of focalize their minds on it, maybe just a defenseman at this point. So going after Zegras and the Leafs doesn't make too much sense. I do like it on the Habs, though. You keep this young core. You bring in another guy that, like you said, is friends with Cole Caulfield, could fit their timeline and would sell seats and jerseys on his own.
Yeah, it'd be really fun to see him in Montreal. And like you said with Toronto, I mean, if you bring this guy in, you're going to have to fill the rest of the roster up with, say, like guys like Cowan, Minton, Tapi Niemela, guys like this who may not quite be NHL ready at this point. They need a few more years or at least another year of development to, be a NHL caliber player. So I think you kind of steer clear of the skid here if you're Toronto and just try to lock up some veterans that you can make for a playoff push. I really do think this is what we see happen. Another team that kind of stands out to me would be the Chicago Blackhawks. You got the guy there, the next face of the NHL, and Connor Bedard. You bring in Trevor Zegras. Two of these guys hit the Michigan in one night. Imagine what they could do on a team together.
Well, I mean, that would just be lethal. I mean, that's a showtime in itself. If you want Patrick Kane, you'd have two of them on the team, and Chicago Blackhawks fans would love that. But it's going to be really interesting, especially with a lot of teams kind of speaking to the media. I mean, more of Darren Dreger saying that teams were speaking to him, and just speculation floating around that he might be on the move, and that they want to just run with, like I said, Leo Carlsson, Cutter, and a guy like McTavish as, I guess, their new forward core and franchise players.
Yeah, definitely have to agree with you. It'll be really interesting to see what happens with Trevor Zegras. Maybe we'll see it at the deadline, but I'm really expecting this timeline to be over next offseason. But it is interesting nonetheless that one of the next, future stars in the NHL is on the trade block. So we'll keep you posted on everything Trevor Zegras, but we're going to get into our next topic of the video here, which is we have a Joesph Woll injury update. And as you take a look at David Alter here on Twitter, he says Joesph Woll is doing some light work this morning. First time we've seen him on the ice since his injury. He's in full gear, but they are being careful with his movement. And as you take a look at Joesph Woll, he's been nothing but a stud for the Toronto Maple Leafs in goal this season, with an 8-5 record with one game going to overtime. He has a .916 save percentage, and this guy has just came out this season, Mark, and lit it up for Toronto, really saved their goaltending. Unfortunately, he did go down with that injury, but it seems like he's working to getting back in order. You don't want to bring this guy back too soon to risk a more serious injury, so you got to give him his time to get into practice, work out the kinks, but I'm really excited to see that he's back on the ice.
Yeah, like you said, it's awesome that he's back on the ice, getting these reps in. And the main thing to look at this, how well Martin Jones has been playing. I believe he has a 9.32 in 11 games. We just seen him sweep the California trip. He's set to play again tomorrow. And he's just been outstanding in this little stint of where the Leafs were really struggling. So I think with the way he's been playing, Samsonov is still, it seems, a little bit away. I know he's still doing work with the Marlies, and he might get into a few games for them. We're not 100% sure. But Martin Jones has been great. And this is a godsend because you've seen a lot of teams maybe get into the goalie struggle, just say Jones wasn't performing, Samsonov was still playing terribly, and then maybe a guy like Hildeby was kind of just getting you by. You might rush a guy like Joesph Woll back. So at least with Woll, getting closer to his return, Jones is playing good. It doesn't seem like they're going to rush it, and it seems like we might be fine running a tandem of Joesph Woll and Jones for the future and going into the playoffs for sure.
Yeah, I definitely have to agree with you, Mark. I believe Martin Jones has really stepped up here from being sent down, clearing waivers to the AHL, then coming up in relief of injury, has really played well here in Toronto, shown that he deserves to be in the NHL. So maybe running the Woll and Jones tandem is really what we need to see here come playoffs, because if one of these guys go down, one of these guys can come in, stay hot throughout the playoffs, and I really do think this is what we see happen. But unfortunately, one of these guys, one of these goaltenders will need to be moved at the deadline, because you don't really want to go with three goalies. Maybe you keep Samsonov down in the AHL or something like this, but it'll really be interesting to see what happens. I mean, Samsonov has cleared waivers at this point, so I mean, you could leave him down there. Maybe you look for a trade. Maybe a team like Edmonton or LA will give you a call on a guy like Samsonov, but it'll be really interesting to see what Treliving and the Leafs do come trade deadline.
Yeah, that's a big thing. I don't really mind having three goalies. I mean, right now they can't fully trust Samsonov to come in and play a 7-game series. But it's always nice to have 3 goalies for this exact situation of you see one goalie struggling, one goalie goes down with injuries. I mean, in the past, we've seen Källgren step in for the Leafs. These are guys you don't really want to step in. That's not saying any hate on Källgren or Hildeby or any of these guys that's down in the AHL or ECHL, but it's nice to have 3 guys with NHL experience that you can trust. So I don't mind having 3 goalies on the roster. I mean, I would prefer our third goalie not to be making $3.5 million, but if it comes down to that and it is a big situation, you can send off Samsonov in a trade. Obviously, you'd have to add some sweeteners, but closer to deadline, it's not the full cap. A team might take a chance on him, see how he plays. If he turns things around, they could flip him, re-sign him, whatever it may be. But I think the Leafs are going to be actively looking around the market and just seeing what's available at almost every position.
Yeah, you definitely make a good point there, because you never know what can happen in the playoffs. I mean, imagine both your goaltenders go down, then you had to bring a guy like Hildeby up that hasn't had much NHL experience, and maybe he comes in, shuts it down, and puts him through the playoff run. But I really wouldn't want to take that risk if you're the Toronto Maple Leafs having such a great season and then losing both your goaltenders in the playoffs. But it'll be really interesting to see, because I really do think Treliving will take some calls during trade deadline. Maybe we won't see nothing happen, but you know, there is a chance that something could happen. But let us know down below in the comment section, what do you think about Trevor Zegras being on the block? What do you think about Woll potentially returning soon? And what do you think about Toronto, you know, potentially trading one of these goaltenders away? Let us know down in the comment section below. But with that said, let's get right into everybody's favorite topic, and that is comment of the day. And the comment of the day today goes to Steve. He says, a few injury problems. I love the trade, but hard to give up the cutter. Risto to Toronto. Shout out to you, Steve. Really appreciate your comment here on this, this evening's video. It's our second video of the day, so I really appreciate you commenting there. Mark, what do you think about a Ristolainen trade to Toronto?
I mean, Ristolainen's a big boy. I know there's a lot of Sidorov talk, and I'm still upset the Leafs never got Sidorov. But I mean, Ristolainen's a big guy. He can throw, hit, block shots. Defensively, he has improved quite a bit this year. I think his cap hit is just around the $4 to $5 million range, so it might be a tight squeeze at this deadline. I mean, the closer to deadline you are, the less cap you take on. But he is signed for an extended period of time, so he might be a Brody replacement going into the future. He's younger, bigger body, throws more hits, right-handed defenseman. I think he'd be awesome. If we can get a tiny bit of retained on it, it would be nice. But at this point, if they want to stack up on the right side, take a couple swings on guys, I think Ristolainen would be an awesome ad.
Yeah, I definitely have to agree with you. I really love those defensive defensemen, as everybody knows on the channel, and this is what you're getting in a guy like Ristolainen. But if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to go down below, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Like we said, we're on the road for 3,000 subscribers, and really appreciate it. If you're not subscribed already, to go down below and hit the subscribe button. And if you enjoyed the NHL, make sure to check out this video we did earlier on the Cutter Gauthier trade and all the stuff surrounding that. Make sure to check that out. And as always, I've been your host, KC, alongside my co-host, Mark Pye. Keep your stick on the ice.